Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing something I haven't really done on my channel before, and that's a review of a documentary. The documentary in question being Jodorowsky's Dune. Released in 2013 and directed by Frank Pavich, it tells the story of Chilean filmmaker Alejandro Jodorowsky and his unsuccessful attempt at adapting Frank Herbert's legendary sci-fi novel, Dune. So before we begin, I do have a Dune playlist covering the book and pretty much all of the adaptations so far with the exception of Children of Dune. So you can check that out if you want to first. And I don't want to give too much insight into the documentary itself because I highly recommend it to you, especially if you're a Dune fan. And even if you're unfamiliar with the Dune franchise, I still think you'll find great interest in this, especially since it focuses on what is often considered by many to be the greatest film never made. So with that out the way, let's begin. So I really enjoyed this documentary, and even though I'm not a big documentary guy, this will no doubt be one of my all-time favorites. You know, the idea of an adaptation of Dune being made in the 70s was as unprecedented as you would expect it to be, given that the book itself was pretty much ahead of its time as well. We get a pretty basic introduction to the director himself, that being Alejandro Jodorowsky. You know, he's one of those surrealist filmmakers in the same vein as, say, David Lynch, which initially gained him notoriety, but also led to him gaining a cult following of sorts over time. And based on what the documentary itself entails, it's very clear that he was willing to go to great lengths to apply his surrealist style to the world of Dune, in the hopes of creating more or less the cinematic equivalent to that of an LSD trip. Think art house films like Into the Void, for example. And he actually keeps the screenplay in a large hardcover book that contains pretty much every aspect of his vision, from the scene numbers to the dialogue, to the storyboards, to the concept art, etc. And I might be wrong on this, but apparently there's only about 6 copies of this book worldwide. And while it is for sale, it does come at a hefty fee, of course. You also get a bit of insight from producers who worked on the film, as well as other filmmakers, such as Nicholas Winding Refn, who you might recognize as the director for the Ryan Gosling movie, Drive. And at the time of recording the documentary, he claims to be one of the few people who actually got to read the script in its entirety. There were also some pretty interesting casting choices for this version of Dune, including the likes of Orson Welles, Salvador Dali, David Carradine, and even Mick Jagger. I'll let you guess who he was going to play. And Jodorowsky even had his own son, Brontes, lined up for the role of Paul Atreides. As far as the music goes, Jodorowsky wanted a couple of famous bands to get involved, most notably Pink Floyd, which I think would have been incredible given what Toto was able to pull off in the David Lynch adaptation. Now, as for the events leading up to the film's cancellation, it mostly had to do with creative differences between Jodorowsky and a certain studio that I'm not going to give away because I want you to see that for yourself. But short answer, it mostly boiled down to the film's runtime. I'm not going to say what it was, but I think it would have been better fit for a TV miniseries or something like that. And so, ultimately, all of the time, money, and effort that went into this production had gone to waste before the cameras even started rolling. But believe it or not, there are dozens and dozens of films out there that have been influenced by this particular version of Dune. If you don't believe me, wait till the end of the documentary to find out. In fact, look no further than the David Lynch adaptation itself. You know, it has some of those surrealist qualities that Jodorowsky was going for. It's got a musician cast as Fade Rother, in this case Sting, and of course Toto composed the score. So the film does have a strange legacy of sorts, despite not actually existing. And that in of itself is the beauty of it. Now, as for me, do I think they actually should have gone through with this adaptation of Dune? No, not really. But I do think it would have made for an exceptional streaming series, especially now that TV shows are becoming much more cinematic these days. But in the 70s, especially before the likes of Star Wars, definitely not. It would have been a colossal disaster. It would have been too long. I think it would have been a bit too surreal for general audiences. Not to mention some of the costumes would have been weird based on the concept art, and the book fans would have definitely been up in arms, especially since Jodorowsky didn't necessarily do Frank Herbert's novel justice based on what he wrote. You know, for those of you who have read Dune and at least Dune Messiah afterwards, Dune was intended to be a cautionary tale about confiding in charismatic figures, and Jodorowsky did not intend to go that route. He actually had a very different ending in mind, and while it was an ending that would have worked well enough on its own, especially for casual audiences who are unfamiliar with the book, it would have definitely had the book fans craving another adaptation in the near future. And as for the director himself, I think he's quite the character. You know, he's very eccentric, but very passionate about the film, obviously, even all these decades later, and honestly, I respect him for it. Now, there's only one issue I had with this documentary, and it's the fact that we didn't really get any insight from the likes of David Lynch or even Cal MacLachlan, who were both involved in the 1984 adaptation of Dune. Not that they really needed to be included, but if they were, it would have been the icing on the cake in my opinion. But putting that aside, I really enjoyed this documentary, and I would highly recommend it to you if you haven't checked it out. So yeah, that's it for this review, guys. Next time, we're going to be looking at the first season of Squid Game in preparation for season 2, so look forward to that very soon. Thank you all for watching. Please be sure to like the video, share it, and subscribe. Ring the bell. Take care, and I'll see you soon.